My sister and her husband moved in with us 2 days ago after they lost their apartment to medical debts for their child, my nephew. My husband and I are more than happy to have them stay for a few weeks till they get this resolved. However, yesterday at 7 p.m., I was in the kitchen when my husband rushed in and said that he saw both my sister and her husband walk out of the bathroom. They'd most likely taken a shower together. My husband said that it irked him, and I agreed that what they did was somewhat inappropriate. He asked me to speak to my sister on the matter, and I did. She got defensive, asking how this is affecting me or my husband in any way. I told her that it made my husband feel uncomfortable and would rather that they just take their showers separately. She started ranting about being overwhelmed by their son's health problems and not having some alone time together as a married couple, and found this activity as a bonding time to spend together. I apologized for how she felt but requested that she just do as asked. She got mad at me and said that I was being inconsiderate and she didn't understand my husband's hang-up on what she and her husband do. We started arguing and she stormed off to the guest's room where my nephew and Bill are. She's not speaking to me, but my husband said I did the right thing by speaking to her and setting this boundary. Am I the asshole? Am I, and my husband, overreacted to this? I have a terminal medical condition which I won't go into too much detail about. I didn't have the best health insurance/doctors, so I found out I had a big problem pretty much when it was too late. About the only thing I had of value other than some meager savings, an even smaller 401, and my car, was a life insurance policy I got years ago when I was 18. It was a relatively small amount yearly and awesome terms, so why not? I always thought I could swap it over to a future wife/kids, but not happening now. So I haven't been able to work now for about 2 months, but I won't be eligible for hospice care until probably a few weeks before the end. The actual policy itself was for an eye-watering amount if I died before a certain age, which unfortunately is what is going to happen. I have been living at home with my parents rent-free since I stopped working, which is good of them. We haven't had the best relationship growing up, and they pretty much only did the minimum required by law in terms of how they raised me. No complaints, but not Parents of the Year material. A lot of this was due to finances. I have been putting money towards food and utilities, but not the rent they are paying, as that was a cost they were covering by themselves, and my being here hasn't increased it. Anyway, I have been investigating cash outs, both through the company and investor groups that will give you a bit more in exchange for being named as beneficiary. I will probably stick with the company offer to get things moving faster. There are going to be some taxation issues, but the end result will be that my parents will essentially get an amount that will cover my funeral and possibly a really good second-hand car. I estimate that the amount I will get will be enough for me to rent a nice condo near the beach, nice meals, maid service, some great experiences while I am well enough, and some in-home care nursing towards the end. My parents have basically said that the life insurance policy named to them will set them up for life and allow them to buy a house and invest, etc., and probably even retire early. They are in their 50s and were probably going to have to work until they dropped. They are telling me that they have made a lot of sacrifices to have me move into their house until I go to hospice, but I really don't see what that is other than the inconvenience of 3 adults in a 2-bedroom house. One of them was going to give up work towards the end to provide some home care until I qualified for hospice, but my cashing out will mean they can keep working. I get that it would be the noble thing to help my parents out, but I don't want to. My fiancé and I are planning a small wedding of about 20 people, mostly just our immediate family and closest friends. He has a cousin, Jason, who he was close to growing up. My fiancé used to live with Jason in a townhouse. During that time, he caught Jason peeing in the kitchen sink, the bathtub, out the window, through the screen, and in the backyard. He has even seen Jason on his security cameras peeing on the driveway. Jason has absolutely no shame and will pee in front of people and in public. His family has told me about a time they were eating lunch on a dock and Jason peed off the edge of the dock into the lake while the family was sitting maybe 10 feet away. He's peed in front of his family on hikes and during road trips too. Even when toilets are readily available, Jason chooses to piss wherever and whenever he wants. I think he genuinely likes it when people say stuff like, "Ew, Jason, gross," or "Why can't you do that inside?" It really feels like he loves the reaction he gets pissing in front of people. That's really the only reason that I can think of for why this grown man chooses to pee like a dog. Our wedding is mostly outdoors. If Jason pees outside and out in the open at my wedding, I might actually rip his dick off while it's still in his hands. Honestly, I think Jason would want to pee at my wedding for the reaction he would get and because he thinks it's funny to tick people off. I don't want to worry about Jason peeing in front of my family on my wedding day or while I'm walking down the damn aisle. My fiancé says he wants Jason there and he thinks if he asks him, he won't pee outside, even though his family has asked him before and he did it anyways. I just don't trust him. My fiancé told his mom that I didn't want Jason at my wedding and she gave me a pretty hard time and asked me to reconsider, so am I the asshole for not wanting to invite my fiancé's cousin to our wedding? I got married to my husband in August. We kept it small and simple and didn't want too many guests due to budget, so we only invited close family members and friends. My older sister, Dawn, has 10 children. My parents and the rest of my family aren't religious, but Dawn and her husband are very hardcore Christians and believe that having lots of children is God's will. Obviously, inviting all of my nieces and nephews would be quite a cost. My wedding isn't child-free, but my husband and I decided it would be fairest if we only invited Dawn's 3 eldest kids. I talked to Dawn about it and explained our reasoning, but she was really offended and said that I'm picking favorites. I told her I'm sorry, but 10 kids is a big cost on our wedding budget and that we tried to be as fair as possible. Dawn accused me of being a bridezilla and thinking I'm too good for her and her family. I told Dawn if she doesn't like it she doesn't have to come, but that she's my sister and I really want her at the wedding. Dawn, her husband and 3 eldest did come to the wedding. But with other family members bringing small children, everyone was asking her about why not all of their kids were there. After the wedding, Dawn has been very off around me lately. She told me she understands how I feel about her babies and said that I'm a bad sister and a terrible aunt, and has accused me of not respecting her religion and lifestyle. My parents and other siblings have been making comments like, "Don't get too excited for XYZ, OP said only 3 people can come because there's too many of us." The comments have been getting to me a bit and I'm wondering if I was the asshole. My dad died when I was 7 years old. He was my favorite person, my mom's favorite person, at the time, and I kind of think he was the person who could complement our personalities enough for us to be super close. Even as a little kid I kind of knew that. It broke the 2 of us when he died. But then she found someone else, she found Luke. She married Luke when I was 9 and he became her person. Luke, upon realizing my dad had been the parent I was closest to, tried to fill that space, and was unwilling to listen when I said that space was reserved for my dad. It caused some tension. Over time I let some things go. They would call themselves my parents or my mom and dad. I always called him Luke. I always told people close to me about my dad and would make sure it was known Luke was not dad. Our relationship now that I am several years out of their house is amicable but not close. I don't hate them, but my mom and I still don't mesh well and Luke still wants to fill that role my dad had and I still don't want him to. Ever since I got engaged my mom has been more present. She has told me how she always dreamed of this day, etc. Over time she brought up how she and Luke couldn't wait to see him walk me down the aisle and give me my father-daughter dance and how they were excited to be mom and dad of the bride. I told her none of that was happening. She told me it was always her dream though. That from the time she found out she was expecting a girl she couldn't wait to watch me on my dad's arm and in his arms for a dance. I told her that was possible when dad was alive. But not when he was gone. She told me it was still possible. There was still my dad, Luke, and that he deserved it. They both did. I told her I was walking with my fiancé and no father-daughter dance would happen. I told her he was not going to be listed as father of the bride anywhere, because he is not my father. I ended up telling her to leave and I went back to less contact. Then my mom showed up unannounced and started to tell me all about this dream again and what it meant to her, and I told her clearly, without hesitation, that her dream stopped being possible when my dad died because he was not here to do that stuff and that Luke was never going to be filling my dad's role for me. I told her she might be able to switch them out easily, but I was not. She left in tears, telling me I had punished her for moving on and punished my dad for not being my dad. That she and my dad deserved better than that, and I was spiteful. Am I the problem here? I worked as a server in university and my daughter worked at Starbucks and a local restaurant when she was in school. I know how servers earn their money. My father-in-law invited us out for supper for my mother's-in-law birthday. We went to a nice Greek restaurant in his neighborhood. The meal was fantastic and my father-in-law said it was on him. Cool, my kids are well behaved and know not to go crazy on their grandparents' money. I have known my in-laws for almost 20 years now. I know he doesn't tip. So I always bring cash and tip whenever we dine out with them. So after the meal, as we were leaving, I checked the bill and dropped 20% on top of his cash. More or less, I guess he accidentally left too much money once and made a big deal about getting his change because the server came running out with the tip I left. My father-in-law knew how he paid and it didn't include a $50 bill. He blew his top. Saying I disrespected him by doing this. I was implying that he was cheap after he took out my family to a nice restaurant. I was just trying to do right by the server. I wasn't trying to be a hero or a jerk. I just know that we took up a table for almost 2 hours and she deserved a tip. My wife is mad at me for upsetting her father. My daughter gave me a hug and said I was right. Is this normal? So I work in a pretty big office in a big city. The floor I work on is specifically for a branch of the company, so there's only a dozen people on that floor. I bring my lunch every day because most of the time I don't have time to get up and get food for myself. One of my favorite foods is strawberries and I eat them all the time. About a week ago, a woman I'll call Jane started working in the room about 7 doors down from me. A couple days ago I pulled out my lunch and started munching on my strawberries while trying to type an email. Jane knocks on my door and asks me what the hell I'm doing. She says this in a very high-pitched, pissed tone, so I'm taken aback and all I can murmur out is a small "what" before she starts yelling at me. She goes on about how I should know she's allergic and that even smelling strawberries can cause her a severe reaction. I cough on my strawberry and rush to put it back in its container, and she gets even angrier that I didn't already know. I apologize and put my food back in my lunch box, then put it in the drawer of my desk. The next day I go to my supervisor, I'll call Derek, to talk about the situation and ask if we could maybe put a sign up at the entrance of our office floor that tells us what allergies our coworkers have. That way we can avoid mistakes that happened the day before. He looks at me confused and asks what I'm talking about. I explain what happened the day before and he sighs and explains to me that Jane has no proven documentation about her allergy and didn't put it on any allergies on the employee information sheet when she was employed. I sigh with relief and ask if it's okay I bring my strawberries the next day, and he says it's perfectly fine. So the next day I brought my strawberries and Jane goes off on me as I open my lunch and claims I'm trying to kill her. She says this loud enough all of my other coworkers gather around my door and see what's going on. Jane storms out and about half of my coworkers tell me I'm an asshole for doing that to her and walk out with her. The other half sits there and tells me it's fine and that she did the same thing to them but with different foods. I'm getting a lot of angry emails calling me an asshole and I feel horrible, but some of my coworkers are saying I did nothing wrong. Am I the asshole? I got married to my husband in August. We kept it small and simple and didn't want too many guests due to budget, so we only invited close family members and friends. My older sister, Dawn, has 10 children. My parents and the rest of my family aren't religious, but Dawn and her husband are very hardcore Christians and believe that having lots of children is God's will. Obviously, inviting all of my nieces and nephews would be quite a cost. My wedding isn't child-free, but my husband and I decided it would be fairest if we only invited Dawn's 3 eldest kids. I talked to Dawn about it and explained our reasoning, but she was really offended and said that I'm picking favorites. I told her I'm sorry, but 10 kids is a big cost on our wedding budget and that we tried to be as fair as possible. Dawn accused me of being a bridezilla and thinking I'm too good for her and her family. I told Dawn if she doesn't like it she doesn't have to come, but that she's my sister and I really want her at the wedding. Dawn, her husband and 3 eldest did come to the wedding. But with other family members bringing small children, everyone was asking her about why not all of their kids were there. After the wedding, Dawn has been very off around me lately. She told me she understands how I feel about her babies and said that I'm a bad sister and a terrible aunt, and has accused me of not respecting her religion and lifestyle. My parents and other siblings have been making comments like, "Don't get too excited for XYZ, OP said only 3 people can come because there's too many of us." The comments have been getting to me a bit and I'm wondering if I was the asshole.